there's all kinds of interesting things you can try, and I would encourage people to just try like super weird, interesting things. I have a buddy who started a company called ZocDoc, which is like doctor scheduling in the US. And they're like, you're never going to integrate into these systems. And so he just took those systems and reverse compiled some of the binaries to figure out their formats. And people were like, I think someone could do that. And then he just integrated, right? Or there's so many examples of things you just try. I mean, I'll give you one that you can imagine, right? Because internships went away, and first grad jobs went away, and everybody started doing senior. And so I secretly created an intern program at Shopify, secretly because I didn't tell most people, including HR. And I just said, I'm going to start it with 25 people. I'm going to have it be only in Toronto. I'm going to make it 3 days a week in person, because I want interns to mingle and not just be fully remote, because that's how you get an internship. And we just ran it a term. And of course, I had a team that was working on it, but we didn't really tell anybody. We kind of just ran it. And then I told Toby, who's my boss, I said, hey, I'm running this 25-person intern program. Check it out. And we're support staff. I don't know, 75 of us. Cool. So then I came back to Matt and I said, what if we did 1,000? He was like, what does that mean? What if we just hired 1,000 interns? And so we did a little bit of modeling. And again, without getting full approval, I got in trouble. I noticed when I went to his office, and I wasn't working there yet, I kind of walked around and I noticed that he had a setup where everybody had a desktop. Every 2 people had a desktop, but there were 2 people on every computer. And what they were doing was they were working together, so 2 keyboards, 2 mice, but 1 computer. So they couldn't type at the same time. But they were both learning and talking to each other, and then one of them would code. It didn't matter actually which one, they were kind of talking and going back and forth. Conference. And so they did. I saw them sitting in the front row, and the security person stopped them with his kids. Right? So again, I think a big part of my journey has been like just try things that may be unorthodox. Sometimes you will end up like it'll work. And what's the worst that can happen? Go to the conference, you don't get it. Right? Not a big deal. So I think that's kind of like my advice. Did a lot of that at Waterloo as well. But, I'm trying to think of some crazy stories where I didn't get Waterloo in trouble. But we definitely did a lot of interesting things, like from actually back in the day. One of the most famous internet documents in the early internet days was this document called the MIT Guide to Lockpicking. The understanding of it wasn't just that, hey, I want to make it better on mobile. My philosophy has always been, how can I learn at the fastest rate possible? So when I realized that what he was doing was not so much, it wasn't interesting that he was doing mobile. But what was more interesting was he was working in a very particular way that would maximize the learning of his employees. So have you guys, anybody here heard of the PAIR program? I'm going to talk about startups a little bit, but I want to make sure I answered the question. Are there any questions on the top? I'll keep going. And what was interesting about mobile engineering he started in 2007, and I joined in 2009, was that it was very early. The iPhone had just come out. There was no App Store, there was no Android. And he was making a bet that mobile would actually be something big. I wasn't so sure at the time. There was a lot of stupid things happening in mobile. I remember Windows Mobile, with the little stylus. Right? There was phone miles and things like that. But it wasn't clear that everyone would have a mobile phone or that you could access you would have a computer. Super deep into something, but also spend way more time than others. And that can actually give you a really a big leg up, because your commodity right now is spending time and trying to understand things. And obviously you're coming as an engineer, so you can write lots and lots of code. But what I would focus on is spending as much time as possible, because you're new and you're not going to understand the landscape. I'm trying to understand it. If you came in and of course you're I'm going to come in and do 3 hours, I'm going to go play foosball, and then I come back, and that's not going to be a good use of the time there, because you're not going to actually be as immersed or learn as much as you could by working harder. And so one of my, I talked about working at Trilogy. The funny thing about that company was when we came in, they go, hey, for the first 6 weeks we have orientation, and here's the schedule. And I looked at the schedule, and it said Monday, 8 a.m. to midnight, Tuesday, 8 a.m. to midnight, Wednesday, 8 a.m. to midnight, Thursday, 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. So I'm like, okay, so let us sleep in a bit. Friday, 8 a.m. to midnight, Saturday, 8 a.m. to midnight, and then Sunday was a half day, noon to 8 p.m. And what was funny about that was we got there and you're I just moved to Austin. I'm like, what the fuck, right? We did it for 6 weeks. And what was amazing about that was on Sunday, it did feel like a half day. Oh my God, I got so much time. I go to the movies, let's go swimming, right? Because it was only 8 hours. And after they ate the 6 weeks, we didn't stop working with them. Cases is actually like AI co-pilots, right? If an engineer writes code, AI Copilot, which actually helps you write code, is one of the number one use cases right now that is actually impacting how engineers work. Now, what's interesting about this is that a few things are happening. One is, we were one of the first companies to, so when the Copilot started becoming popular, I remember seeing something in one of our interviews channels where somebody said, okay, first candidate who showed up with an LLM, and I have to tell them no because our question is so easy to answer with an LLM. And I said, well, you did the wrong thing. The thing to do is not tell the candidate they can't use an LLM. The thing to do is change your question. Because now if I can come to a coding interview with a GitHub Copilot or Cursor, and I can answer the question that's supposed to take me an hour in 5 minutes, cool, let's work on something harder together. The interview process to meet people at Amazon to see if they were really good. And so I literally went, this is a long time ago, and I interviewed for 8 hours. Loved the interview process. I'm weird like that. Met lots of smart people. They did give me an offer, but I declined, and they kept in touch with me. But I was like, I want to go and see like what type of people work at Amazon, and it's the same thing with lots of companies. And I think you'll learn over time the types of people that you would like to work with. But I use it as not a filter for them, but I use it as a filter for me to understand how it works. And you can, again, the way to get those interviews again is like build something. The interview process to meet people at Amazon to see if they were really good. And so I literally went, this is a long time ago, and I interviewed for 8 hours. Loved the interview process. I'm weird like that. Met lots of smart people. They did give me an offer, but I declined, and they kept in touch with me. But I was like, I want to go and see like what type of people work at Amazon, and it's the same thing with lots of companies. And I think you'll learn over time the types of people that you would like to work with. But I use it as not a filter for them, but I use it as a filter for me to understand how it works. And you can, again, the way to get those interviews again is like build something. And I can help them get there 1% a week, right? So that's what I'm good at, and that's what they're good at. So I kind of made a list, and I met all these crazy founders. I had lunch every day, and I was like, and I quit my job before I knew what I was doing, so I was like, I'm just gonna go find a crazy founder and see what they're doing. And when I met Daniel DeVoe was the first person on my list, who ended up being my co-founder. And he was like, he's like super irrational, and we started talking, and he's the one who said, oh, I have 10 ideas. And so I met with lots of entrepreneurs, and I tried to again figure out like, are we API compatible? Because there's definitely, and not everybody works with everybody, but it made me like I figured out about myself a long time ago that I'm not the solo founder, but I'm also too rational, right? A lot of times, and this is Toby's very good at this too. I'll come to it like option. What do you want to do here? Option A or B? He's like, you're so stupid. As soon as he says that, I'm like, you're right. Generate more options. Every time, because he always comes up with some C or D that I didn't think of. Daniel's the same way. So I always know that like there are people that you have to kind of figure out about yourself what works, and as you get, you spend more time with people and work in different environments, you're like, okay, I know that this is what I'm good at, and this is what someone else is good at, and we complement each other.